Right at 9 o'clock. Let's just give it a couple more minutes. See who else comes on in the last minute here. Might have a pretty small group this morning. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. I'll continue to admit people as they come in. Thank you for joining me this morning. If you could please enter your first and last name on the chat to receive credit for the class, and your email address if you'd like to receive a copy of the recording or a copy of the presentation slides. We are recording the class. Feel free to ask any questions during the class by using the chat or by raising your hand or something, and let me know you have a question and we can answer it on the spot, hopefully. Can everybody see the construction slideshow screen? I hope so. Okay. We're going to be talking about the diocesan construction policies this morning. Oops. First off, I'll give you the link to the website where you can find these policies on the Diocese of Yakima website. This is what the page looks like, basically. So you can click on any of these appendixes or the policies themselves to read the guidelines that we're going to go over today. I'm going to go over them in summary form, but if you have any need for any more detail, you could just let me know and we'll dive deeper into any of the topics. General guidelines for the diocese are that any project that is $25,000 or more that's related to the building and construction, remodeling, parking lots, roofs, HVAC, any of that building or improvements type stuff. If it's over 25,000 or more, you need to follow the construction guidelines of the diocese. There are some exceptions to the rule. Even if it's less than 25,000, you still need to follow the guidelines if the work requires a permit, if it involves the worship space. Obviously, if it exceeds 25,000, if it's for architectural services, we need to go through the policies. If it involves asbestos abatement or removal or anything related to asbestos, that definitely has to go through building council. And if it involves roofing or mechanical equipment, and that would include the HVAC units and so forth. So any of those items all need to go through, any of those types of projects all need to go through building council and follow these policies. On all the contracts, since the diocese is the owner of all the property and the buildings and the land, all the contracts need to be in the name of the Corporation of the Catholic Bishop of Yakima, which is the official corporation name of the diocese. And the properties are all held in trust for the parishes and the schools and so forth, but they are legally in the name of the diocese, Corporation of the Catholic Bishop. Project will identify the school name and the city and the location of the project. They can include an approved by signature for the pastors. It's not always there. A lot of times it's just the bishop signing those documents, and they should all come through me, and I'll coordinate his signature, get them through the proper review and coordinate his signature. This is basically what we're going to go through today is the steps of the flow chart, and the flow chart is one of the appendixes on the, I think it's the first appendix. 1 and 2 is in English and Spanish, is the construction flow chart. And that's what we're going to go through today, which is basically the summary form of what the policies are in detail. So the first step of any project is exploration. You send a letter of intent to the bishop stating what you want to do and why. How will this project further the mission of the parish or the school and so forth? That needs to be in writing. It can be in the form of an email. And, so a lot of times what happens is pastors will come to the bishop and just talk with him in person about a project. And he might give them a handshake kind of approval at the time, but that doesn't mean that's an official approval. He does this, but then he always wants it in writing as well, so that we have the documentation. So even if you have a conversation with the bishop and he approves it in person, still send the letter of intent, and then we'll make it official with something in writing. The next step on the flow chart is discernment. Okay, I was just reading a note from the chat. Thank you, Father Mike. Discernment is the next, once a project's been approved to move forward by the bishop through the letter of intent process, then it goes into discernment. And that's when you're trying to figure out, okay, what's your master plan for this project? You're going to include in that discernment report. And this is for large projects. We'll go into we'll talk a little bit more later about smaller projects. But for the large projects like remodeling a school, building a new church, all of those larger type projects, you're going to go through this detailed process. So this discernment report needs to include description of the parish ministries, the demographic information, and the needs assessment. And you can survey your parishioners to try to figure out what that needs is. The parish, it's your master plan. You're going to identify the proposed project and what all is part of that project, what you want to do to the extent of how large the project is. And then I do have some samples of other discernment reports that have been turned in by other locations. If you want an example, I can always send you a sample of another type of discernment report to help in the process, so you can have an example of what they look like. During this process, you also are going to be selecting your architect, which means you should be going out to bid for proposal for architects in your area is preferred, but you can't always get one that's, you know, local. Sometimes you have to go out of town to find a good architect. So you should go out for at least 2 bids, preferably 3 or more. And then you collect those architect bids, you review them with your building council, you select one, and then run that process through me, and I'll run it through the building council for approval. The liturgical consultant is required if it includes any modifications to a worship space. And Father Miguel in the diocese here is the liturgical consultant right now, or you can hire liturgical consultants as well. I know they're quite expensive though, so it doesn't always happen that way. A lot of times we keep that in-house, but that's totally up to you and your building council. During this time, you're also going to prepare some financial planning and funding plan. So you have a big project on the table. How are you going to pay for it? Do you have the money now? How much do you have now? How much do you need to collect? What is your fundraising campaign going to look like? What's your capital campaign going to look like? And you can present that in your discernment report. If you're going to be short on a funding, but you know that you could fund it down the road, you can look at the CRP loan requirements and borrow that money from the CRP. You basically would be borrowing it from all the other parishes and schools that have money in the CRP if needed. And then you could try to meet those CRP loan requirements, which is half of the money you have in your account or in your CRP account. And the other half you would need to have in pledges from donors to meet the requirements of a CRP loan. And then we also expect your ACA goals to be met by the time your building project is in process. Also during discernment, your building council is going to meet with the diocesan building council to present that discernment report and request recommendation to bishop for approval. We have the diocesan building council meets 4 times a year, and the next meeting is December 6th, which is next Monday. We don't always have a meeting. If there's not a project going on, we might skip it that quarter, but anytime. And we can also get approvals through email is what happens a lot, since the timing is not always perfect for having an actual meeting. So, but you know, you can just present your proposal through me, and we'll get that request reviewed through the building council and get it on its way. Once approved, your architect contract needs to come back to me for review by our attorney before it can be signed by the bishop. And a lot of times with the architect contracts, they're very complicated. It's the AIA forms, and they take a lot of review, and there's usually some back and forth between your attorney and our attorney to try to negotiate those terms of that contract. And it's very important because the diocese wants to be as protected as possible, because the architect contracts, the AIA forms, do tend to be more favorable to the architect and not to the diocese or to the builder. So that's a very important step to make sure that those get reviewed by our attorneys and that all the terms are agreeable to both parties. Step 3 of the process is this conceptual design and the funding plan. So basically, once you have your discernment report approved by building council, you've got your architect contract approved and signed, your architect's going to start working on that conceptual design, and then you need to start working on your funding plan. No, you're not supposed to be fundraising until it's all approved by the bishop. And the reason for that is we don't want to collect money for a project. These would be donor dollars that are restricted for this specific project. And if it doesn't get approved, then you end up with money that's sitting there that you can't spend because the project is no longer viable. So that's why we say no fundraising should occur until the project is approved by the bishop. During this process, you'll identify the specifics, then create the basic concept design for the project. You're going to potentially develop a 5-year operational plan for that project. You're going to look at further development and completion of the fundraising projections and the loan requirements if that is the case. And you're going to maybe even hire a fundraising consultant. I know that's happened in a lot of locations for the very large projects. A fundraising consultant is hired. They are quite expensive, but they do help bring in a lot more money, and they take the burden off of your people and put it on a consultant to help raise that money, and it's very helpful. After that concept is completed, it comes back to building council through me, and then we'll have it reviewed and we'll look at all of that before you move over to the next step. Once that's approved, step 4 is you're going to start your fundraising. And that's going to entail fundraising drive, whatever. If you hired a consultant, it's going to be whatever they've worked on. A lot of times they will survey all your parishioners for you, and they'll find out how much is out there and available even to be collected. How much are people willing to give for this particular project? There's some financing forms in the appendixes of the construction policies that you can use as a tool. You don't have to use them, but they're there for your use if you need them. If a CRP loan is needed, then maybe you're just fundraising to get up to that requirement level so that you're having half the value of the project you have to have in cash, and the other half you should have in written pledges from donors. Once it's satisfactorily funded, you're going to get the money in time to do the project, or in time to at least get the loan and pay back the CRP and all the other parishioners or all the depositors in the CRP. Then you can move forward with schematic design with the architect. The schematic design, it goes to building council, and once it's all completed, and through your architect and your liturgical consultant, if that's applicable. The slides, yes, the slides will be available. Just put your email and that you want a copy of the slides in the chat room, and we'll make sure you get a copy of the slide deck. The building council will then review that schematic design and the project budget, and they'll recommend approval for bishop again if they approve of all of that. Or they might have some suggestions on how to tweak it if they have some suggestions. I should mention the building council is made up of there's 2 priests on there. I'm on there as well, but I'm mostly there as a coordinator. We have an architect on the board currently. We have a very experienced construction person. He's retired, but he worked in construction for probably 40 years. And a couple of just general lay people for consultation. And so our board's made up of some pretty good experts to help get through the process of construction projects. Step 6 is the design development, and the construction documents begin. Building council and architect are going to go to these design development phases and complete those construction documents, generally getting them ready to go out to bid for construction. Building council will review those again and make a recommendation to go to the next level. You're going to then continue to collect your pledges and your deposit, and you're going to hopefully be depositing that money, and you should be depositing those donor dollars as you collect them for the building project into the CRP account for your location in a FICA account, so that those dollars are protected and they're not going to be hit with market fluctuations. They're going to just earn a little bit of interest and sit there and be ready for use when that project's ready to fire off. Then, once you have that step through, the competitive bids are going to go out. The architect usually assists with that process and puts those bids out for you. A lot of times they'll ask me for a list of preferred contractors. I do have some, and we've worked with several, so I'll, obviously recommend the ones we've worked with that went well. There's a lot of contractors out there. You try to stay local, but you can't always stay local. A lot of times those bids are going out to 5, 6, 7 contractors, and you're going to collect those bids and make your selection. You're not always going to select the lowest bidder. Sometimes you're going to select one that's maybe in the middle or even a higher bid, because you're going for the reputation of that contractor and trusting the integrity of that bid a little bit more maybe than the lower bids. But that is a process you should go through with your architect and your building council. And if you would like the diocesan building council to review those as well to help in the process, we have been known to, or been asked, I know I have joined some of those bid meetings as well to join in and provide consultation as well. During that process, then you're going to select which bid. Those bids are going to come back to building council after you've made your selection, and they're going to look at it as well. And 9 times out of 10, they're going to agree with you. They might have some comments, but it's a pretty smooth process usually. You're going to finalize that contract with the contractor. Some contractors use a pretty simple contract agreement. Some use an AIA form, which is a lot more complicated. All of those contracts need to come through me to get legal review, because those are very complicated as well. And we want to make sure we're protected as well, as much as possible for that building process. The contractors need to be bonded and insured properly as well. That's another requirement. And then once, I have a little typo on there in step 10. Once that contract is signed, you're off and running, and you can schedule the construction with the contractor and move forward with your project. Because at this point, all of your funding should be there, or your CRP loan should be secured and in place, and you're ready to go. You're ready to start construction and start paying for that project. And then, of course, final steps is your construction completion and your warranty and that's all done through the contractor. Now, as I should add that if the money is in the CRP, which it usually is, because it's usually a large sum of money if it's for a big project, to get that money out of the CRP, all you need to do is send a check request form to the diocese, and a copy of usually it's a construction and progress billing from the contractor, and it will show, the whole project, how much is completed, this is what's due now, and that needs to be approved, signed and approved by the architect. And that the only reason we ask for a copy of that to go with the check request form is to make sure that we're not paying for work that hasn't been done yet. We want it to be certified and approved by the architect, who is usually the one monitoring that progress on the project, and make sure that they're not billing you for something they haven't done yet. So it's just a second set of eyes on those bills, really. And then we'll issue the check either back to the parish or school, or sometimes we're asked to write the check directly to the contractor, and we can do that as well. But that money will come out of your CRP account and then go toward the project and until it's completed. So for smaller projects, as I mentioned earlier, there's a slightly different process. We can make it much more streamlined and easy. You should still send a letter of intent, and it can be in the form of as simple as an email. It doesn't have to be a formal letter. Sometimes we don't send a formal letter back. We'll send back an email, and that'll serve as the approval, just to keep it simple and reduce the paperwork a little bit for the smaller projects. These are projects like, roofs. You don't need an architect to sit in on a roof most times. There are some complicated roofs out there that may need that, or if there's changes to be made. The HVAC units, those types of things, those are the projects that we can streamline very quickly. A lot of times these projects are smaller. The funding is usually there. A lot of times you just need to go out to, once it's approved by the bishop, collect a couple of 2 to 3 bids, 2 at least, 3 preferred or more. And then, again, meet with your building council, select which one you prefer. We want to make sure we're selecting a contractor that is reputable and is well bonded and insured. Especially for roofs, we've run into, there have been lawsuits with roofs in the past, and it can get very ugly if we get a contractor there that's doing the work that is not qualified to do that work. The bishop should be the one to sign those bid proposals, but in some cases, if he's out of town or he's just not available to sign, he might give permission for the pastor to sign those forms. Any contract that is presented needs to go through legal review, needs to come through me to get reviewed to make sure that it's properly worded and negotiated. We can negotiate back and forth with the contractor to get that done before bishop will sign it. So that's the procedure for the smaller projects. And I went a little fast. I knew my slides wouldn't take a whole lot of time, but I was hoping to get some questions from folks. Oh, okay. For dollar level on the smaller projects, it's not necessarily, now the smaller projects can be under 25,000. I'll go back to the slide that shows the exceptions. So, if it's involved roofing or mechanical equipment, that would be HVAC type equipment. Those can be under 25,000 and you still need to follow this process. But roofs can be very expensive. You can have a roof that's, $300,000 and it can fall under the small project limit as well, just because it doesn't require as much, it's not going to require an architect to come in, or it's not going to require schematic designs and those types of things. Those are the types of projects that are going to qualify as a smaller project. Does that answer your question okay? Bob, Deacon Bob, thank you for your question. Do we have any other questions? I don't see any other questions. Oh. Is there a de minimis level that does not, yeah. Well, if it's under $25,000 and it does not fall under this exception list, then yeah, you would not need to go through construction policies. So say you have an example of that would be, you want to get new carpet in the church and it's less than 25,000 to replace that carpet, or you want to get new pews and it's less than 25,000. Those types of projects, you can go through and do those yourself. You don't need to come through me and through building council to do those types of projects. Mechanical is, air conditioning, heating units. What other types? Those are the big ones that I've seen. I suppose for schools, there might be some large kitchen appliances or special heating or water heaters and things like that that might fall under this as well. Does that answer your question? And if there's any question, if you're not sure, shoot me an email, give me a phone call, and I'll let you know if it's something that you can move forward without consulting with.
Am I unmuted now?
Yes.
So we're thinking about redoing the siding around the exterior of our building, and it would probably be a $10,000, $15,000 price.
Mhm.
Is that something that we can do ourselves, or do we have to go through your protocols?
Yep, you can go through that. If it's under 25,000, it wouldn't require a permit, I don't believe, to do that.
No, I
Not
don't.
unless you're changing structure. So that should be fine to move forward with.
Okay.
I do suggest, even if you have any small projects that you're not going through building council for, or these processes, still, pick reputable contractors, try to get a couple of bids, what I do a lot of times to check these companies out, if it's a new company I haven't worked with before and you're not sure how they are, the internet is full of information. Department of Labor and Industries will let you know if you just go on and look up a contractor there. It's really easy process. The website's pretty user-friendly, easy to click on. Go look up a contractor, you type in their name, and you can see if they're current on their payroll taxes, if they're insured. You can get some information from that to see if they're reputable or not in the eyes of Department of Labor and Industries, and that they're licensed, and that their license is current and their bond is current and all of that good stuff. That information will be on the Department of Labor and Industries website. So that's a really good tool to use. And I'll use it oftentimes when I'm checking out contractors that I haven't heard of before, that I haven't worked with before. So I know there's probably sites that give reviews. There's word of mouth. You can talk to people. Maybe they worked with certain, or ask for references from the company as well to see if anyone else has worked with them, and see how their experience was with working with them. Volunteer work, I should mention, if you do projects with volunteers, there are volunteer forms they need to sign, because if they have an accident on the job site, we could potentially be liable for that if we're found at fault for that accident. So that's why we have volunteer forms for each of them to sign, especially for construction projects. You want to be real careful, because that could get expensive in a lawsuit if there is some sort of an accident on the job. So they're basically going to sign the volunteer waiver form that says, that their insurance would be primary, and that, unless something egregious happens where we're just completely at fault because of whatever the situation was, they're not going to be able to sue us for that. So if they go trip on the sidewalk, we could potentially be at fault if it's a bad trip, because our sidewalk should have been repaired and there shouldn't have been an uneven section on it or something like that. But if it's completely their fault, then they're not going to be able to come back and nail us for that, for an accident that was not our fault. So, but it's important to get those in place and have those on file for any volunteers that do work for the locations. So, any other questions from anybody? There's 11 of us today, so thank you all for being here on a Saturday morning. I'm sorry I didn't take up the full hour, but maybe that's a good thing, so you can get on with your day. So if there's no further questions, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up early. Again, just make sure your name and email is in the chat if you want a copy of the slides and a copy of the recording, and we'll send that to you. It'll come from Valeria here in the office. She's going to be managing all of those copies to go out. So, okay. I'll give it a couple more minutes, but go ahead and, you can take off if you like, or if you haven't typed in your name, I'll give you a couple more minutes to do that. So have a great day, and thank you for joining me this morning.
Sue, you mentioned 2 priests on the building council. Who is on the building council?
Oh, now you're testing me. Okay, Let me. Father David is on there, and Father Monsignor Seiler is on there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Oh, and Father, oh no, no, wait, those are the only two. We do have one person from, nope, that's just for that. Yeah, those are the only two priests on there. Scott Kunans is the architect. He's a local architect here in town. And Jake Junt is the contractor, the retired contractor that's on there, who's very knowledgeable. Okay. Do you have any more questions for me, Bob, before I sign off?
No, let's see.
Did you get that project or that figured out with the sewer, finding where that was way back when you had called me?
Oh, yeah, with regard to that, I found that we are not on city sewer
Oh.
in Warden.
So there was a
And
septic out there.
talking to Warden, it sounds like we don't want to get on city sewer. That's
Okay.
very, very expensive. So
Okay.
I'm anticipating another call out that'll probably cost us $3,000-4,000 perhaps. I don't know that much, but
Yeah.
to finish the location, we're going to have to dig down to the top of the septic and put in an access port so they can come, and so it becomes a regular routine pump out from here on out. But had I known all the facts about the city, then we could have incorporated it into our repair, because they had to dig up a section of the pipe earlier and there was a tree root that was plugging it. So we're good for now, but I haven't been able to determine from anyone in the parish that the septic tank has been pumped out since it was put in. So I do not know.
Yeah.
Maybe it was a very large septic tank. I don't know.
Well, I think it can be examined and they can find out how full it is.
Yeah, so I'm thinking we need to uncover it. We need to get it pumped out and see what we got. And,
yeah, probably a good idea.
And then go from there.
Okay.
I also, well, I guess I have a question. So what is our deductible for theft on the insurance policy?
I think it's $1,000. I want to say.
We did have a lawnmower stolen from Queen of All Saints, about $2,200. So
okay, well, but yeah, it is. I believe it is $1,000 because
the wind damage one turned out to be $2,500, so it wasn't worth filing a claim for. So I didn't know what.
Yeah, I think the lawnmower might fall under the 1,000. But, so it must be over a big riding one or something. Right?
Yeah, it was a riding mower. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you can always check with them anyway. If Jill Ott is a real good resource. You can ask her, is it worth turning this in? She'll check it out.
Yeah, I should have checked with her. We filed a police report, but I meant to call Jill Ott, and then I forgot to do it. Now it's been 2 months back. I don't know whether it's.
Oh, it's not too late. It's not too late. You can still do it.
Okay.
Yeah. They usually like to see a police report, which you said you already got, or did you not get one?
Well, I didn't see a copy, but I was told that by the parishioner that filed it.
Oh, and he didn't. Well, hopefully they kept a copy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because the Catholic Mutual would want to see a copy of it.
Yeah.
I don't think it's required, but they like to see that.
Yep.
So, okay. Good deal. All right. Well, anything else before I sign off?
Yeah, in Royal City, we'll just continue to raise money for general building.
Yeah. Because
we won't have a specific project till we can collect substantially more funds. So.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the way to do it. Okay. Well, thanks for your hard work out there. I know it's been probably a challenge over there with everything going on.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the presentation.
You're welcome anytime. And you know where I am if you need anything else. Give me a call. Okay. Well, have a good day. I'm gone.